Australian batsman Phil Hughes will be laid to rest in his hometown in Macksville this morning. More than 5,000 people, including Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott, are expected to attend the funeral ceremony. Cricketers from around the world have gathered in the small Australian town to bid a final adieu to Phil Hughes, who passed away earlier this week after sustaining an injury on the field. Special arrangements have been made in Macksville ahead of the ceremony, which is expected to see VIP movement. Australia's skipper Michael Clarke will be one of the pallbearers and will lead tributes at the funeral of his close friend Phil Hughes. The funeral will be attended by the Australian Test squad as well as past and present luminaries of the game, including Mark Taylor, Sir Richard Hadley, Brian Lara, Virat Kohli, Ravi Shastri, Shane Warne, Mike Hussey, Ricky Ponting, Brett Lee, Adam Gilchrist and Glenn McGrath. Let's get a word from former Indian player Nikhil Chopra, who's with us in our studios this morning. Good morning, Nikhil. A really sad day for Indian cricket. People from around the world gathering to pay their last respects to Phil Hughes. What an unfortunate loss. He wasn't even 26.
Absolutely. You know, his entire cricketing career right in front of him. Simeon, the important thing is, you know, you're absolutely right. Sad day in international cricket. Somebody who's been playing the game, just about to make his mark in the Australian international side as well. You know, great respect from him from around the world. It's unfortunate, you know, first time it's happened that an international cricketer or for any cricketer dying because of a short pitch delivery of a bouncer. That's why you see people from around the world going to pay their last respects to Phil Hughes, and it is an absolute sad day. I hope from here on in, you know, people who are making the helmets or cricketing gear will, you know, get their eyes open, use a little more technology, because this is 2014, you know, you've got technology, we might as well make the most of it. I think it's important. At the end of the day, you know, we've all been brought up with the thought saying that you're always playing the sport, never playing the game, but, you know, it's unfortunate that playing the sport, somebody loses his life.
Absolutely. And Nikhil, you know, Phil Hughes was a young man, he was talented, he was looking at a bright career. Also the fact that he was extremely popular is evident with the fact that so many people are gathering. This entire ceremony is being led by Australian captain Michael Clarke, who's also believed to be a close family friend. Very
close. And what we know, you know, and everybody says, you know, it's not just his cricketing abilities, like you said, you know, he's a very popular man. He got along with everybody, happy-go-lucky attitude, and that's why people have gathered in such large numbers to pay their final respect to Phil Hughes.
Absolutely. Nikhil, stay on with us. We're also being joined by our consulting editor Rajdeep Sardesai, who's with us on the phone line. We also have with us our consulting editor Sports, Boria Majumdar. I want to come to you first, Rajdeep. A really sad day, but you know, it seems like all the superstars of cricket are gathering this morning in Macksville to pay their last respects to this bright young cricketer who was looking at a really bright future, but unfortunately his rise to the top was cut short by an unfortunate freak accident.
That's right, Simi, and I think in a sense the entire cricket world is touched by the fact that what happened to Phil Hughes could have happened to any of them. It has reminded cricketers across the world of their own mortality. You know, people become legends in this game, they become celebrities, but when you see something like Phil Hughes happen, you realize the fine line that exists even in a game like cricket. You know, everyone thought cricket was a relatively safe game. It's not like motor car racing. It's not a game where every day you're battling with, you know, between life and death. But I think Phil Hughes' death has reminded a number of cricketers that, you know, of their own mortality. And I think that's why a number of them have come to Macksville. A number of them knew, of course, Phil Hughes very well. Just think of it. Many of those who played against Phil Hughes in that match were actually his teammates, because he was earlier with New South Wales. He had shifted to South Australia 2 years ago, and many of them were his teammates till not too long ago, had shared a dressing room. And spare a thought today for the bowler, Tony Abbott, the bowler who bowled a ball that killed his colleague. It is an incident that is tragic, and I think tragedy and grief has brought the cricket world together, and it's good to see the solidarity that we are seeing across the cricket world in this moment of grief. The cricket match has been postponed, and as Shane Warne rightly put it, this is not a time to debate about the safety of the game. This is a time simply to share one's thoughts with Phil Hughes and his family. To die at the age of 26 playing something you love so much is truly tragic.
Absolutely, Rajdeep. And let's also get a word from Boria Majumdar. Boria, we always say that cricket is like a religion in our country, but what we're seeing in Australia is also something that reminds us about how popular this sport is internationally. More than 5,000 people expected to attend Phil Hughes' funeral this morning.
Simi, if in Australia this is the national sport, this is actually the national sport of Australia, leave alone Australian rules football or any other sport. And you were mentioning Michael Clarke to Nikhil Chopra. You know, I had a chat with Michael Clarke day before yesterday, who happens to be a dear friend, and it was understandable what they are going through. I mean, they were in no position to play, no position to even talk. David Warner, Michael Clarke, some of these mates of Phil Hughes, they summed it up quite beautifully. They've lost a brother. Michael Clarke wrote in his newspaper column, Phil Hughes was more than a brother to him. You know, for the Australian cricket team, who have all gathered there in Macksville today, this is an extraordinary situation. Forget the test match, forget anything else. To lose a colleague, and 4 of them were playing in that game, David Warner, Shane Watson included, to have played that game and to have seen what happened is perhaps something they will never forget. And to conduct themselves with utmost dignity, real empathy, is something that we need to take a lesson from. I think the Indians have also done wonderfully well to have shown that level of empathy. Virat Kohli, Rohit Sharma, Ravi Shastri and some of the others who've flown in. I think this is the time, as Rajdeep put it, to show solidarity for Phil Hughes and his family, while not to intrude in the private moments of the family, at the same time to show them that the entire cricket world is behind them. I'm sure entire Australia is, and I've got no doubt that the entire cricketing world and around the world will also pay their tributes to Phil Hughes.
Absolutely. Let's also get a word from Nikhil Dafsri, sports journalist, who's with us on the phone line. Nikhil Dafsri, it's a huge loss for international cricket, but it's heartening to see international players coming together to pay their last respects to Phil Hughes.
I think there's been a big loss in international cricket, and not only all the players, but also the locals here in Melbourne. And they're all joining in the Fed Square, where they got a big screen showing the Phil Hughes' last funeral. And it's been a tragic moment where all the locals have gathered, put their cricket bats down, and try to go and watch the funeral during lunch breaks from work. And you can imagine how important the cricket as a game is here in Australia, especially. And I think it's unbelievable to see such a great support here.
Absolutely. And Nikhil, I want to come to you. You know, as Raji pointed out, our thoughts also, even as our thoughts remain with the family of Phil Hughes, there's also something that we feel for Sean Abbott. He's a young 22-year-old bowler. He has his entire career ahead of him, and he's somebody who must be battling extreme emotions right now. It was because of his bouncer that hit Phil Hughes on the field that day, but it's not something that he would ever have imagined.
No, never. You know, you bowl bouncers to try and probably scare the batsmen, intimidate them, you know, try and induce a false stroke, but never, you know, to get a batsman that seriously injured. It'll be very, very difficult for him to get back into competitive cricket, and I believe Cricket Australia and some of his close friends, the families, would probably get him to do a bit of counselling. It'll be difficult, you know, he'll have to get himself going. And I was reading somewhere that he said that it'll be very hard for him to go out and play competitive cricket again, and to go out there and bowl with that same zeal, that same zest to try and pick up wickets. But you know, somebody needs to talk to him and saying that, you know, it wasn't really his fault. It was doing whatever was within the rules, trying to put Phil Hughes on the back foot, and then probably force that false stroke. But it is very, very you know, sad that Phil Hughes passed away, but it will take a long time, I think, Simi, for maybe Abbott to come back and bowl into competitive cricket.
Absolutely. And you know, Rajdeep, I want to come to you. It's interesting how so many people have come together today to pay their last respects to Phil Hughes. Almost 5,000 people expected in this small town of Macksville. Also, it's not just international cricketers, not just simple fans, but even the Prime Minister expected to make an appearance.
That's right, Simi, and I think it also shows what cricket means to Australia. When Australia had a poll a few years ago as to who was their most respected Australian since the war, the overwhelming choice was Sir Donald Bradman. I don't think in any other country would a cricketer be treated even on a higher pedestal than any other public figure, as is the case in Australia. Australia and cricket means everything to Australia. and therefore to have one of their own. And they're also a boy, remember, who comes from a small town in Australia. Australians always pride themselves on the great success story of how people who come from the outbacks then go on to achieve great glory for their country. I think Phil Hughes, in a sense, has touched a chord with every Australian, not just across the world, but Australians in particular, because he represents the great Australian story, a story of hard work, a story of triumphing over adversity. You come from a small town and achieve fame and fortune, and yet remain rooted. Anyone who knew Phil Hughes, I can only say this from reading the articles, say he was an extremely humble boy. And that's the way the Australians like to see themselves. They play cricket hard, and yet they remain humble and rooted. So I think Phil Hughes, in a sense, reminds Australia of what they want their country to be seen as by the rest of the world. It's a cricket-crazy, cricket-obsessed country. It's a country that plays its cricket hard, but it's also a country which sort of respects the game, respects its traditions. And that's why I think you're seeing this kind of overwhelming support for Phil Hughes across Australia, with the Prime Minister also present at the funeral, along with, of course, all the Australian cricket players.
Absolutely a fit tribute for the young cricketer who lost his life in a tragic accident. Boria, you said you spoke to Michael Clarke a few days earlier. It was a harrowing time for all the team members, especially the last 3 days leading up to Phil Hughes' death, when he was battling for life in that hospital.
Yes, and you know, Michael considers Phil as his, Michael doesn't have a blood brother, but considers Phil as his own brother. And Michael was there by the, by Phil Hughes' side right through. I mean, I remember he went back home around midnight and came back the following morning at 6 a.m. I mean, the moment Michael heard this tragedy, he left everything and was by Phil Hughes' side, as was David Warner. Last year, I had the opportunity of meeting Phil Hughes when the Australian cricket team was in Chennai, and to just echo what Rajdeep was saying, he was one of the most humble but one of the most jovial cricket players that I have come across. I mean, he was completely down to earth, just chatting away. There was no aura that, you know, I'm a cricketer or anything like that. And that's what Michael and David Warner kept stressing. I mean, it is a harrowing time, continues to be a harrowing time for the Australian cricket team. For them, at this point in time, the only thing that they needed to do was stand behind Phil Hughes. Australia is the only cricket country, Simi, where you still have 80,000, 85,000 people coming for a test match, not a one-day or a T20. And that is what tells you what Australia is all about. In India, we don't. Make no mistake, in India we don't come and support test matches like the way Australians did. Philip Hughes was about to make a comeback in test match cricket. That is why, you know, Australia is so important for world cricket. That is why you are seeing this outpouring of emotion from around Australia. Phil Hughes came to New South Wales. I also had a chat with Keith Bradshaw, the chief executive of the New South Wales Cricket Association, and he was saying that the amount of labour that Phil Hughes had put in over the last few months to make a comeback into the Australian team was exemplary. So the hard work, the effort that this man put in, and suddenly to be robbed of life at the age of 26 is tragic. And just, you know, his birthday was last Sunday, 63 not out. I think one of the best gestures from Cricket Australia at the request of Michael Clarke was to have retired Phil Hughes' one-day jersey, number 64. That tells you what Phil Hughes means to the Australians at this point in time.
Absolutely, complete outpouring of emotions, not just in Australia. We've been seeing all kinds of tributes coming in from across the country in social networking sites as well. We'll continue with our live coverage. Rajdeep, Boria, Nikhil Davsari, please stay on with us. We'll be back in just a bit. Our big focus this morning is on Australian batsman Phil Hughes' funeral, which is taking place in Macksville this morning. More than 5,000 people expected to attend that funeral ceremony, including Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott. In fact, we just saw him arrive at the venue and signing on that guest book. 5,000 people from all over Australia attending this funeral ceremony, including cricketing greats from around the world. We have with us our consulting editor Rajdeep Sardesai live from the national capital. Also with us our consulting editor sports Boria Majumdar. We also have with us former Indian cricketer Nikhil Chopra in our studios this morning. Also Nikhil Davsari, sports journalist. I want to come to you, Boria. We saw the who's who of the cricketing world coming together to pay tribute to Phil Hughes. Shows not just how popular Phil Hughes was, but also how much respect this sport gets in the country.
hugely popular. Within the Australian cricket team, Phil Hughes was hugely popular. I mean, I can tell you from past experience that he was one of the people who would get the team together, take them out for dinners, take them out for lunches. I mean, do these communal things. Despite being dropped on occasions, he never ever complained, as Michael Clarke keeps talking about. He was one of those people who kept the dressing room alive. I mean, kept the dressing room buzzing. Whether it's Aaron Finch, whether it's David Warner, Brad Haddin, Shane Watson, Michael Clarke, there might be divisions within the Australian team, say difference of opinion, say between Michael Clarke and Shane Watson. But Phil Hughes was one of those people who got the entire team together. And that is what I think is the standout feature. You can see Matthew Wade on your screen there just a moment back. You had seen Peter Siddle. You could see Brett Lee. The entire Australian cricket world, Simi, has come together to pay their respects for Phil Hughes. What stood out for them are two aspects. One, his fighting quality. And secondly, the determination to make a comeback despite being dropped. I mean, for Phil Hughes, adversity never brought gloom. For him, adversity was an opportunity to improve, and that is the point that the Australian cricketers keep stressing. No question, they've lost a mate, they've lost a buddy, and they've lost a very talented cricketer.
Absolutely. Nikhil Chopra, I believe we have to let you go. But before you go, I want to get one last answer in from you. It's a huge loss for international cricket as well to lose a young player who's not even touched 26. He was to celebrate his 26th birthday the weekend before he died. It's such an unfortunate loss and also extremely tragic considering that he was an extremely promising young man. Well,
without a doubt. He had his entire career right in front of him. And like Boria says, he's worked really hard and he most certainly would have made a comeback in this India series as well. It is so very unfortunate for somebody to die at such a young age, and when he has the entire cricketing career right in front of him. Hugely loved, the live wire in the cricket ground, live wire in the dressing room keeps everybody smiling through your, ups and downs in your own cricketing, terms. In the dressing room, Simi, you need characters like Phil Hughes to keep that smile. Even when the team's not doing well, it is characters like Phil Hughes that put a smile in the entire dressing room.
All right, thanks so much Rajdeep, Boria, Nikhil and Nikhil Dafsri for staying with us. We're going to slip into a very short break. We'll be back with our live coverage in just a bit.